Time speed. 180, take one. I want one more.
Hi, laddie.
It's Christmas time. I know you
No acting at all. We're actually terrified.
love yourself, your family, and friends tonight instead.
So Lost at Christmas began as a short called Perfect Strangers, and Perfect Strangers was the sort of brainchild and baby of our director, Ryan Hendrick, who had this idea for this short that was going to be sort of an example of what he was capable of and what the company was capable of in order to make features that were going to be different from Perfect Strangers. But Perfect Strangers, the short, did so well and travelled so far and was so well received by so many people that eventually it became clear that maybe it would be a good idea to expand Perfect Strangers into a feature in its own right, and that's how we got where we are today.
Well, after Perfect Strangers the short came out, it did a lot better than any of us anticipated, and it was kind of became the gift that kept on giving. We thought it was done several times, and then it kept coming back, and people kept requesting it, or festivals kept taking it, and then it got offered distribution, and it got nominated for BAFTA, and it was just a sort of crazy journey. And as we were going, people would always say at the end of it, "Oh, that was really good. I want to see more." It felt like a feature film, and it was a 25-minute film.
Oh my God, get that heater on. I am freezing. I feel like I'm growing icicles on my ears.
I don't get it. If you had a car waiting just a few streets away, why were you trying to get a train?
I don't. This is my ex's car.
All right, well, can't have been that bad a breakup if he let you borrow the car.
You know how I said all men are bastards?
Yep, you said it twice within minutes of meeting me, in fact.
Well, I didn't mean it. Not all men. Just him. And I'm sure he'll be really understanding when he realises that he let me borrow his car.
The idea was there, and I thought, no, it was a proof of concept. I don't want to do a feature film, and it, that kind of, and the conversation kept going and going, and people kept pressing, "Are you ever going to do that?" And we went out to Los Angeles with our next short film, Sundown, and discovered the way they're making films over there is they're not sitting around waiting for their big £1 million budget to go and make the next Marvel film or whatever. They're going out there, the advice is just get out there and do what you can. And a lot of these guys are out there making these $20,000, $30,000 horror films. And there's a very good reason that they pick horror films, because it's about commercial genres, and certain genres are more accessible to lower budget productions. Audiences are more inclined to watch a Christmas movie or a horror film but without huge big names and massive production values. So the idea was there, and we kind of came back from LA just sort of wired, just like, okay, let's do something, what do we want to do? And I thought we can do a horror film, and I wasn't too keen on that at the time. But right in front of us was Perfect Stranger just staring us in the face. I mean, it's there, it's accessible, it's a Christmas movie, people already like it. We know the concept works, so let's do that. Let's take it and make it as bigger and better as we can. And that's what we did.
Hang me, oh hang me, I'll be dead and gone. Hang me, oh hang me.
The basic concept of Perfect Strangers is about someone coming into your life at a low point in your life, and they make an impact on you at that point, and then they move on. It's not necessarily someone who fits into your life or necessarily has to stay in your life. And it was just built out from that. So we're very mindful of those themes. And the heart of the film is really the scenes with Rob and Jen in the bar having dinner, and just how that evening progresses, and how they really sort of identify within each other elements of their own sadness and their loneliness.
With the luxury of more time, we did get to look at the context of the characters and their lives and what brought them there in a lot more detail. We really got to sort of see their previous relationships break down, and whereas in the short we were just sort of thrown right into the action, and you had to just assume that they had these previous relationships that have gone awry and brought them to this unhappy place. In the feature we did get the opportunity to show that.
You know what, I've actually kind of got something for you as well.
What did you get me? Is it the silver? Oh. What is that? Rob, what are you doing?
I'm getting my best trousers dirty. So I've been contemplating the best way to bring this up.
It's okay if you couldn't get me the 12-carat earrings.
Nikki, would you do me the honour of becoming...
Rob, no, stop.
Ryan and I have really different but complementary approaches to writing. I'm very much an agonise over every single word and every single character and their intent, and I agonise over every single line, which means that it takes me a very long time to get anything done. Whereas Ryan's quite the opposite. He's a let's get something on paper, hit our plot points, and then we'll worry later on about whether it's right, whether it's wrong, what we want to change, which I think works really well together, because I kind of need that to move me along. Otherwise, I sit looking at page 3, 4, 5 for 6 weeks and get nowhere with it. And then, yeah, we phone back and forward and Skype back and forward and send drafts back and forward. Occasionally sort of sit together in a room and do just get from start to finish and tear it apart and then start from the beginning again.
It was a lot of toing and froing about whether it was about how funny it should be, how dramatic it should be.
We had a lot of kind of late night panicked phone calls at various points, but one of them, probably the most standout one, was the, hey, how you doing? Have you got 5 minutes to talk? The producers want doggers in the car park.
It was one of these things where I hated it. And the producers were a very big fan of it, and they were pushing and pushing and pushing for this scene to stay in, and I didn't know what to do.
We can veto the doggers, can't we? Tell me we can veto the doggers, Ryan.
John, the DOP, just looked at the script and went, well, my only problem is that scene, because apart from the fact that it's shit, we can't afford the lighting to light that scene, so it's got to be cut. Thank you, John.
Yeah, some of the ideas that we were sort of presented with by various parties involved were just not ever going to happen.
And eventually we settled on the right tone, which I think is respectful enough to what the original short was, but also took it to another level. So we weren't just rehashing exactly what happened before, even though in some elements we did do that very deliberately.
Lost at Christmas deals with a lot of themes that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a rom-com. The characters are both quite lonely, but their loneliness comes from different places. Even though both of them have partners at the start of the movie and have lives that are quite full in many ways, their loneliness comes from them not really being in touch with themselves, I suppose, and knowing who they are. And only by meeting each other can they sort of discover these other parts of themselves.
I'm Jen.
Rob.
This is a film about two lost souls, two broken-hearted people who are drawn to each other, and they find each other at a time of crisis in both their lives, and they take this journey trying to find their way home, but also trying to find their way back to themselves and try and mend their hearts along the way as they take in the Highlands of Scotland, and they meet a lot of other lost souls along the way, and they all kind of come together to help each other through a period of of sadness and loneliness at a time when the world is experiencing great joy at Christmas.
And then it deals with togetherness and how wherever there is a community of people that care about each other, that's where you've got your Christmas spirit, and that's where you can find out about who you are and overcome that loneliness that you might feel when you're in the wrong company by being in the right company of people who understand you and understand what you're about. I think it's about love, obviously, as rom-coms are, but it's not just about love for someone else, it's about discovering the love for yourself and who you could be, your best self.
And how they start to kind of help each other overcome that. They don't fix it, they don't fix their problems. It's like they help each other get to a point where they are ready to go back to the real world and deal with these problems. Because when we meet them at the start of the film, they're both crushed entirely, and they're nowhere near ready to start dealing with what's happened to them and coming to terms and moving on, more importantly. So the idea of creating this bubble where these two get to exist together and bounce off one another and find a happiness in amongst all this sadness was really what the film was about.
I suppose I better get going. Do you want...
Maybe we should both get where we need to be.
Yeah.
It's a good story. It's a very relatable story. You know, I think this one's obviously it's a bit different because it has that quirky element to it and the fact that it's not all jolly but it's, you know, I think if you like Christmas movies, you're gonna love it. There's nothing not to like, you know. I think it works. It's got a really good narrative.
We were just determined that the tone of this film was appropriate to the story that we were trying to tell, not a particular genre. And we were just sort of very comfortable early on with the fact that meant some people would like it and some people wouldn't, but that we weren't willing to compromise on the story that we were trying to tell to put in crude jokes, just so that we could hit a certain gag quota per minute.
When a romantic comedy's done well, it's, you know, When Harry Met Sally, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Gregory's Girl, it's a hard thing to get right, but when you get it right, it's brilliant. And if Ryan can do as good a job directing as writing, then it's a must-see.
I like this lamp.
Nice lamp.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, the journey from short to feature, what is that going to look like?
Longer.
He's making up as he goes along. Delbos, Badgers.
I was going to tell you something really exciting, but I can't because it's a spoiler.
I love you very much.
Clare Sheeran got a BAFTA nomination for her performance. Kenny didn't.
People should support Perfect Strangers because I really want to be in it, and if you don't support it, it won't get made.
Sounds stupid. It's quite good. That was alright.
Are you going to be able to edit this?
That's not.
It was all about, okay, we think we can maybe raise this amount of money, and we went out there, tried to raise it, we tried to crowdfund it. The crowdfunding was a disaster. All the years that we'd spent learning the business of film and how to get independent films going, we basically kind of reached out to all our contacts.
Ryan, I don't know how he does these things, but he managed to locate some group of people who were accepting pitches for finance for anything really. It was more on a business level, wasn't specifically to do with film.
So Apollo is an angel investment syndicate, and syndicates invest in companies in hope to get a return. Apollo is a little bit different than the other syndicates, is that we specialize in the earliest stage of investment. So companies that got an idea and want to turn that into something a bit more tangible, like Magic Monkey wanted to have the investment for their first movie.
Well, the pitches that we would normally get would relate to more kind of commercial businesses, and they can vary from businesses in the tech sector, the leisure sector, things like that, and they have a more sort of operational aspect to them, but also they rely on getting to a point where they can prove that their product works and is commercial, whereas this was more around demonstrating that a film which we were pretty confident could be made, given the pedigree of the director and the team. It was about how successful it would be, not whether it could be made or not.
I think investing in the movie industry is quite unusual. We have been approached in the past with projects, so for one-off movie or one-off series, but Magic Monkey was more of a series of movies, a real company, and then at the end of the day, if you look at it, it doesn't really matter if the company sells bread or movies. A company is a company, they produce something and they sell something, but it was quite unusual for our syndicate to invest in movies.
And he decides to go over, and lo and behold, unexpectedly, they're like, come on down. And he's like, oh my God, I've got to go and pitch to these people. So he tries to get stuff ready, goes onto the train. I get a phone call. It's like, I'm having a meltdown. I'm going to this thing and I haven't a bloody clue what I'm going to say type thing.
When Magic Monkey came and Ryan came to pitch to us, beforehand we had a conversation, and I had a lot of chats with Ryan and said, okay, I'm not entirely sure if our members would be interested in investing in something like this. It's quite unusual, I don't see it happen.
So literally on the train journey, me and a colleague were working away, adjusting this pitch, trying to make it brief enough and punchy enough to help him. So literally from the time it took him on that train journey to his destination when he walked in, he now had the new thing which he had to sort of learn on the train, and then just in time went in, bang.
And I kind of joke that it's like the Dragon Den scenario, except you're not in a scary basement and they're not sitting there with little lamp tables of piles of cash. So I went in and I was terrified. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't think. And I pitched them this idea.
But then when the pitch came, I think I saw the mood change a little bit in the room. I think there are a couple of components. I think Ryan was a good storyteller, so that really worked in his favor. But from an investment point of view, Ryan clearly showed what kind of return an investor could achieve with movies that are relatively small or relatively unknown. No big Tom Cruises or big actors in this movie, but movies that were kind of unknown to me and most of the other members, generating nice returns.
To my surprise, there was a bunch of questions, and at the end of it, Mikhail said to me, thanks so much, we'll be in touch. And the look we both gave each other suggested, and we admitted to this to each other later on, that we both came out of that thinking, oh well, that's probably not going to happen, but it was a nice idea.
So after the meeting was finished and Ryan left the room, we had a bit of a chat, and I was a bit surprised how many people that were interested in the movie. And when I emailed Ryan the next day, I said, actually I think there might be enough interest in the room to take this further.
They were suitably impressed, and he got the money.
Casting of this was mad. I knew right away that I wanted Kenny back, and I really knew that I wanted Natalie involved. So it was very much talking to them, and then we did a test shoot and made sure that they had the right chemistry for what I wanted to achieve.
No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Look, it's not that bad. Look, I can't. Sometimes I can just be a real dick, you know, but it's not that bad. Just please don't cry. Please don't cry. Don't cry.
I'm screwing with you. Yeah. You can cry and feel it's a bit of a party trick. Not very nice. Like, you shouldn't speak to people like that.
Seriously.
Don't be a dick.
Right from the start, I knew I needed to have 2 lead actors that I could trust. Not in terms of whether or not they had the acting chops, obviously very important, but those I knew would respond quickly to a fast-paced and an intense environment. And I knew I wanted to have Kenny, because he was in the short, and I knew I wanted to have Natalie, because Natalie I've known for a very long time, and one is a brilliant actor, as is Kenny, but I knew would respond to the challenge. And because the 3 of us have a very good friendship, we had a lot of time in advance to spend building the parts, building the characters, and really understanding what they wanted and what I wanted before we even got on set.
So with a character like Jen, my immediate thought was, well, it's a big character. She's very flamboyant and very enthusiastic outwardly, and I know that could be quite annoying, and I wanted to find the root of her and what makes her tick, and ultimately what's happening in this moment in her life is that she is heartbroken, and I wanted to sort of ground her in that. So that was my approach, was to have a facade of someone who is happy and coping, but for the audience to actually be able to see that underneath is someone who's really struggling. It's like when you talk about a duck gliding and how underneath actually their feet are paddling like crazy, and that was kind of my approach with Jen, and I hope that I managed to build in a subtle sort of gradual breakdown of this facade that she had.
I think that when you're working with someone who's a really, really good actor, that's the biggest hurdle. You know, that a lot of what people call chemistry is actually just acting, just like everything else is. It makes it so much easier to work when you know that that other actor is every bit as talented or more so than you are, and you can trust and rely on them to just be amazing. And then all you have to do is respond to that amazingness.
Chemistry is sheer luck. No, I mean, obviously me and Kenny have known each other for years, and we have worked together in plays. We've been on stage together, but this was the first time we'd ever worked really closely on a film set. And I think the fact that we both had very similar ideas about the film, we were very much on the same page. So, you know, I think that gave us a very strong foundation to work from, and ultimately it's about trusting the other person that you're working with. I think having that trust there and having, you know, a very similar understanding of how we wanted to approach it we were able to build that chemistry upon that, and I think
I didn't have to worry. I didn't feel I had. There were 2 actors that did not need to be mollycoddled by me the entire time. They knew what they were doing, they'd get on with it, and we would have a good sort of back and forth relationship as we figured it out. But we'd already figured it out, which was great.
I would definitely say we did speak beforehand, but not in great detail. We would message each other and say, well, you know, how do you feel about this particular scene? And we would discuss how we felt about it and how we felt our characters would be in that situation. And it was a very organic filming experience, and Ryan's obviously, as a director, is very open to our suggestions and our thoughts.
Ryan knows what his actors need. If an actor really needs to be told in the minutiae what's this character thinking, what's their motivation or whatever, and what's brought them to this moment, and needs to have an in-depth conversation about it, then Ryan's prepared to do that. But then at the same time, with actors that he's known for a long time, like myself and that, he's quite happy to say, I trust you, I know what you're doing, or if you do need more guidance, to give you it in shorthand, because he knows that we have this shared experience and this shared history. That means that he doesn't have to go into a huge spiel about it. every single time, because he knows what we're capable of and what we're not capable of.
When it came to the supporting cast, it was really a matter of how ambitious can we be and how cheeky can we be to bring in some big names. So right off the bat, Fraser Hines and Caitlin Blackwood worked with me on Sundowns. They seemed to have a good time, so I called them up and said, will you come back and do this?
I like working with Ryan. I liked how coming onto set, everything's so casual. It's not, we have to do this, you have to do that. It's quite, everyone chats and gets along, which is nice. And yeah, he's a good director to work for.
It was great, first of all, working with Ryan again, because we'd worked together on Sundown, so I knew it would be an easy shoot and a happy shoot, because he likes things to be like that. And of course, working with Sylvester McCoy, we were sort of Waldorf and Statler, and of course we'd done conventions, Doctor Who conventions together, so we knew straight away that we were going to have fun.
Fraser was in Doctor Who way back when I first started watching Doctor Who. He was a great companion of Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor, and so I knew him from there, but never didn't know him personally. And then I got to know him going to conventions, because we travel all over the world meeting Doctor Who fans, and we've become friends doing that, really. But this is the first time we've actually worked together.
There's a couple of old guys that are sort of like fixtures in the bar, and it's like, you know, there's a line actually in the film where they say they've been friends for 62.5 years, and you could imagine that Fraser and Sylvester had been friends. They've just got this chemistry. I mean, I don't actually know how much work they've done together. They've both got a Doctor Who connection, but they're pals, and they sell it on screen as well. It's a joy to watch them work together.
And Sylvester had this lovely idea, crafty old codger. He said, Fraser, I think we should have a Highland accent. I said, well, you have a nice idea. He says, no, because the way you speak with a Highland accent, you have to speak very slow and we'll get more screen time. I thought, like that. Good idea, Sylvester.
To a soul. Aye, poor lassie. She told me, though, that she was going to be getting...
No, that's not your story to tell.
Nearly was. And... well, my character's a kind of the resident... I wouldn't say drunk, but you know, he sits at the bar. It's with Fraser Hines being my partner in crime, really, and we make pithy little comments while trying to get pithed.
I just found that, I said to Silver, and we just said, we kind of knew straight away what we were playing. We were playing two old guys, two old friends. There was no need to look into the background, because it was in the script, you know, about divorces and wives dying. So there was no need to look back and what schools we went to as kids and everything. It just, and any little look was so natural. We never rehearsed it. Obviously rehearsed the scene, but little asides and little nods, they were just came naturally. We didn't actually think, Sylvester, I'll look at you and nod, and you'll look at me. Didn't do it. It just happened so naturally.
Sylvester McCoy. Now, I knew Sylvester a bit.
He's a Doctor Who fan, and I met him at Doctor Who conventions, you know. That's how we kind of got to know each other. But then over the years he kept saying, we must get a film going, but it takes a long time to get films off the ground, really.
I don't suppose he fancies coming to do this for very little money. And to my surprise, yes, he wanted to come back to Scotland, he wanted to work in Scotland, he wanted to work with Fraser, who was a good friend, but he had never worked with. He knew Sanji from when they were both in Still Game. And it was just, yeah, somehow the whole thing really appealed to him.
Well, I saw a little movie that Ryan had done with Fraser, which I thought was a very touching, a sweet little film, and thought, wow, there's something there, there's some sort of magic there. And so I thought I'd quite like to be part of something like that.
There was a brief out-of-moment experience I had where I came out my body and looked down and went, I'm in a scene with Sylvester McCoy, oh my God.
Don't beat yourself up, Ed.
I can't even imagine. And I thought I knew what heartbreak felt like.
Well, it's all relative. I mean, pain isn't a competition.
Then I went to Clare Grogan, and I've known Clare for a long time, whilst we've been trying to build up our other film, Journey Bound, which still hasn't happened yet and hopefully will happen. And yeah, so she's one of these very supportive people who will occasionally just check in to see how's things going. And was supporting us with Sundown, and it was just we had a good relationship there. So I just called her.
Well, I first met Ryan a few years back, and he got in touch with me about another project that he was working on that still might happen, and we just kind of really clicked in a way, and he sent me the script, and I read it, and I just think it's got a real genuine charm to it, and it's funny and it's edgy and it's just quirky. It's right up my street, basically. So once he broke it to me that I wouldn't be playing the romantic lead, I went, okay, I'll play the frosty cow Anna.
You don't know any of us. So how dare you force your faux cheerful Christmas spirit on us?
Yeah, I've seen your face when you think nobody's been looking. You are full of shit. And you know what? No amount of Christmas spirit is going to fix what broke you. So don't you dare drag us through this pantomime like puppets in your healing process. Grow up and leave me out of it. Well, she's just, she's just kind of aloof and, in the background, and like, she's come here to escape, basically, and escape her life, and just, but she's brought all her misery with her to a certain extent, and it's just about how she gets through. I mean, for a lot of people, Christmas is a really tricky thing, and I think that that's quite interesting, and that, in Anna's case, she's one of those people, and we all know somebody like that. And, there's lots of humour in the kind of that people trying to cajole her into being part of it.
I'd obviously known of Clare Grogan for many, many years, but never met her. And again, that was a nice little carrot when Ryan said Clare Grogan's going to be in it. I thought, oh, I'd love to meet her. So it was fun. We didn't have any scenes together, which was disappointing. But maybe in Ryan's next film, we might hint.
Then I went to Sanjeev. I didn't really know Sanjeev Kohli. I'd met him at the BAFTAs a couple of times, and we have a lot of mutual friends, so I'd kind of written this part for him, hoping he would agree to do it, and the producers told me as I was writing it, unless you get Sanjeev Kohli to play this role, there's no way you're getting that character to say that, because no one else can pull it off except Sanjeev Kohli.
So just one more thing. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you.
£20 says he gets his soul before midnight. I just like the cut of his jib. You could just tell when someone's on it, and he's very driven and very focused and just a nice guy. And I've always said that I want to work with people that I think I might work with again, or just that I think, because I have a certain status in Scotland, I know that maybe it can lend power to a project. That sounds really un-Scottish saying that, but I want to be able to sort of like recycle my bizarre status into, to help other people. And Ryan's one of those people, and also he'd written a part for me, so I'm flattered. My character is Sadiq, or Sid for short, and he's the vaguely irascible, quite sarky manager, stroke owner of the Clare Inn, where the romantic leads come to stay and have their adventure. And it's a fun part.
Can I interest you in some traditional Scottish delicacies?
What's good?
It's all edible.
I wouldn't say the character's similar to Naveed, but I mean, Naveed in Still Game is very, very sarky, and I'm not really that way. I'm a bit more of a people pleaser. Whereas I think the thing with Naveed is he has the power in his shop to be what the hell he likes, and Sid's the same here. This is his domain, this is his territory. So it's like under his roof, it's his rules sort of thing. So he's just quite kind of, oh, aye, very good sort of thing, which I'm not really like that at all.
This incredible cast of very famous and very talented folk all came together, and it's almost like perfect casting. No one feels stunt cast in it. Everyone's brilliantly suited to the parts that they're playing. And they're not all necessarily playing it for laughs, although some of them have, obviously there's comedy and different elements that they have that are very much designed to be funny and hopefully kind of tailored towards their style, because they're all very experienced comedy actors, but they all have their own backstories and depth, and there's a sadness to everyone, which is why they've all gathered at this hotel that doesn't celebrate Christmas.
I find that characters really creep up on me. I tend to not, particularly for something like this, I don't like to overthink it. But you find that because you're thinking about the script and where you're going and all the other kind of external things around that, you start thinking about just like little details for the character. Like I've cultivated this tiny chipped piece of nail here because I like the fact that maybe, she's just kind of unraveling bit by bit. And it's just, I didn't even do it kind of that consciously, and then I realised, this is going to be really good for Anna because clearly I was unravelling a bit at Christmas this year. But just little things like that, they really do just suddenly kind of invade you.
It's a lovely script, and we are enjoying ourselves, sealed into the microclimate of Glencoe at this time of year. It's been fantastic. My part, I would say it's a central pivotal role, but actually it's only in about 2 scenes. No, it's a tiny part, but really enjoyable. I bring my daughter for a Christmas getaway to kind of rebond with her. My storyline is I'm separated from my wife. My daughter lives with my wife, so this is the excuse or the chance to get back with her, away from the entrapments of a family Christmas. But it's tricky, really, because it's very different from my own situation at home. Although I do have a teenage daughter now, so she's 13. My daughter in the film is 19, so that's a very different thing. But we're kind of bonding over a little bit of the shared history of that kind of relationship that father and daughter have, which is usually one of mutual misunderstanding. No idea what you're talking about. Music, what do they do? Which is very similar to a lot of what happens in my home life.
What are you all looking at?
We were just outside and...
Snogging?
Snogging. Dad, nobody says that anymore. You're so embarrassing. I'm still a teenager and she's still a teenager, and my dad can be quite strict sometimes, so I guess it kind of came a wee bit natural to me. Which was nice. I didn't have to dive too deep into the character and find out what it's all about, and so it's just about her getting to be a wee bit more about herself and stuff like that, be a bit of herself for a change.
In terms of the sort of respect and the pressure of me and Kenny as relative newcomers working with these, sort of well-established actors, I think we were really lucky in who we had on our set, because not one of those actors made us feel any less than what they were. So I could imagine there would be other actors of the same sort of calibre who would maybe not have made us feel as comfortable and as respected, but they showed us nothing but the utmost respect, and they encouraged us and supported us from the minute they walked on set.
Planning a shoot for a film like this probably has to be more organised than most films because of the fact that limited budget, limited resources, limited time. So at that point you have to be pretty sure before you set out that you know what you're doing. You need to know how you're going to shoot each scene as best you can, and you need to be able to adapt when things go wrong. You've got to be able to know how to shoot a scene in the most economical way with the fewest possible shots that tells the story. From that point of view, Ryan, the director, knew what he wanted out of the scene, and between us we knew how to get it, so that worked well. Time is everything on these things because you just can't afford to do run over, do overtime, and you can't afford to overshoot. So in this case, 12 days to shoot a feature film is not a lot. You've got to know what you're doing.
So one of the sort of big scenes in the film is the Christmas dinner scene that's got the whole cast in it, or almost the whole cast. There's a few characters that aren't in it, but the whole core cast are all there. And because of the shooting schedule, there was only a day, maybe 2 days, when the entire cast were actually all on set at the same time, which meant that those 2 days were incredibly intense because we had to shoot everything that needed all of the characters at once, all within that time frame. So there's people there, incredible actors that you really admire, and you've just got to kind of like get down to work and work with them because you haven't got the time not to.
You get up in the morning going, this is going to be hard. And it was hard, but it wasn't that hard because in terms of cutting your cloth when you know you've got to, Ryan made a decision about the prop food, and instead of going through the whole rigmarole of a Christmas dinner, we just cut to the end of it and they finished eating. It comes in, there's a time jump. That single decision made by Ryan made that day possible to shoot. Without that, we wouldn't have shot it.
Well, now, the Christmas dinner scene was slightly difficult because you've got the whole cast around there, and you've got a real turkey, you've got real sprouts and carrots and potatoes, and you have to be acting, but your little brain, and I'm quite good at continuity, thinking, I passed the sprouts on that line. I took the potatoes. So you're acting, but because knowing there's going to be a cutaway, or Fraser cutaway, on this, when did you deliver the sprout? When she said so-and-so. So you have to be acting your socks off, but also your brain's going, ticking things off and remembering things. So that was quite difficult to do, because as I say, everyone was in it. And if it's just been one take, in one shot, you can fine rip a turkey leg out, but knowing there's going to be cutaways, you have to be on the ball to remember the continuity. I'm a great stickler for continuity. And here's to the first kiss, or as we put it up here, no, we say. Sorry.
I don't know where you put it anyway.
I think the wonderful thing about it though is I don't remember it as being a difficult or stressful day. I'm sure the crew would say different, but I don't remember it being like that. I just remember that sort of sense that we'd finally got the band all together. We were all here, we were making this thing together, and everyone was working together as equals and as a team, and the atmosphere was really easygoing and really chilled out, especially considering that actually we were under massive time constraints. It felt like having a big Christmas dinner with friends, even though some of the people in the scene we didn't really know yet. And I think that speaks for the professionalism and also the friendliness and just the wonderfulness of everyone that was in that cast.
If you look at the thing as a whole, you go, this is going to be hell. But you just got to break it down and go, how do we do it in the fewest possible shots, and start at the beginning, work your way through. And that's what we did, and we finished it. It worked well, and it wasn't a high stress day. The other thing that makes a huge difference, talking about shooting scenes on time, is if the actors know their lines, which may sound slightly simple, but it really is true. And on this film, all the actors work pretty well, word perfect all the time. The amount of time that saves is just huge.
Working in that environment of having a very short amount of time, for me and Kenny, we were the main players in terms of being in every single scene. And in that respect, I felt, and I know Kenny felt the same, that we didn't want to mess up. So which is why you'll find there's not a lot of bloopers, because I was very aware that time was tight, that everyone was working at the top of their game to try and get this feature film made in such a short space that it didn't feel right to me to start messing around or to not put in the work to know my lines, to know my cues, to know where I was standing. I just wanted to, and Kenny was the same, we just wanted to come in and just do our jobs to the best of our ability. Because we could see that everyone else was in the same situation. It certainly puts a firecracker up your a hookie.
Here's to the first kiss, or as we say up here, a sheep dip.
I think what he means to say is to young love.
Lang may you lumreek.
Slate 94, take one.
There's a lot of live music sequences in the film, but they actually required quite different ad hoc approaches for different sequences. For the band, giving it Yahoo and playing, the full-on stuff, that was, quite straightforward. That was just recording the tracks in time so that they could be brought onto a location. And then a sort of a semi or quasi-miming kind of process to try and sync with all that so that the track could then be introduced to the film and everything matched up.
There's a whole lot of things I've not told you. It's not just because I don't want to.
So yeah, the song was, let's be honest, a traumatic experience for me because I love singing, but I do not have confidence in it, and singing in front of other people is not easy for me. It never has been, even in character.
A special version of the song had to be recorded for Natalie, taking into account the changing key and the instrumentation, what was actually going to happen on set, because what we wanted to do was be able to have control over that once it got into post. And so we needed, rather than miming, because she wasn't miming, she actually sang it on set and was recorded on location.
It was difficult for me. I did feel a lot of pressure in that respect. But again, everyone was super lovely, and I do remember Sanjeev coming up afterwards when I first sang it and giving me a hug and being like, that was so beautiful, I loved it, and that just, it meant the world to me. But that was quite a challenge for me.
There was a time pressure so that you wouldn't want to have multiple takes if some of the guitar that she was doing didn't work out. So the guitar was recorded in advance, and it also meant that we were able to, we knew she would be singing to that performance, which meant that it would all sync up fine in post, and that all worked out perfectly, and then we just engineered it once it came back into the studio.
I must say, I love doing location work in a real house, or a real, rather than you walk onto the set, and the sets are brilliant, but I love working as an actor in a real place. So you walk into that bar, and the bar's got a lovely bar smell, a whiskey smell or stale smoke. I love, because most of my scenes were in a bar anyway. I like working on location. I must say, I do like location work.
I love Glencoe. I think it's one of the most stunning parts of Scotland. There's so many different, very great parts of Scotland, and we could have picked so many different locations for this film. But I felt it had enough of the romance, it had enough of the grandeur that we wanted for the setting. But also, we needed snow. And there's only a couple of places in Scotland where you can kind of almost guarantee having snow. To some degree. Didn't quite work out that way, but you're kind of you're onto a good bet that you're going to get what you want at certain times of year. But also the hotel, the Clare, was such a huge character in the film, and you don't find many places that have that rustic quality to it that is big enough to get a full camera crew and actors and all the kit that you need to do scenes, particularly indoors. So the Clare is one of these rare places that looks stunning inside and out, had everything we needed for the requirements of all the scenes in the film.
One of the things that makes making a film with this sort of short time frame difficult is that there are factors that you can't be prepared for. You can't plan the weather in Scotland. The weather in Scotland's going to do whatever the weather in Scotland's going to do.
The day that we shot up in Glencoe ski resort, when there was gale force wind storm going on, and we tried and some of the footage actually is in the film and it does look stunningly dramatic, but when your cameraman and the camera nearly gets taken off like the house in The Wizard of Oz, then it's time to call it a day on that particular shoot.
Jane!
Jane, what are you playing
I'm
at?
so sorry, I wasn't thinking. I just needed to get away so I could think.
Listen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we got stranded. I'm sorry you didn't get the Christmas that you wanted.
It's just a day.
No, it's not.
Yes, the forest scene, that's an example of when things conspire against you. So, not a difficult scene to shoot, but you cannot do it in a bog in a blizzard, which is what we attempted to do, and we had to abandon it and remount it on another day. It was the only occasion on the film where you go, this is actually getting quite dangerous just from the weather conditions, and you know, you've got to make a decision just to stop before someone falls over and hurts themselves or disappears into a bog.
The minute the trees start sort of coming out of the ground is when you know you have to get the hell out of there.
Working around these problems instead of just saying, well, we can't film today, we're going to have to lose the day, was essential. So we had one of the crew, Tommy, who became the snowman, running around with his fake snow, throwing it at actors' faces and dropping it outside of windows, and various other little devices to make it so as we could keep on making the movie even when problems occurred.
Slate 3, take 1. Act.
Having done the short film, we knew the risk of possibly not getting snow. So we bought up as much as physical, practical prop snow as we could. We had this stuff that turns up in these big bags that looks like you're sort of smuggling cocaine or something. And you take it out and you stick it in a bucket, and then you add, was it 10 times the water content to the powder, and it just goes poof.
And then apparently it turns into snow. Oh my god, it's working! Oh my god, it's working. It's like the Christmas lectures. That turns into snow. A low budget Christmas movie.
And it just expands into this really fluffy and really realistically looking snow, and it was great. So we'd have loads of this stuff, and then we had this big machine that sprayed out snow where we could cover roofs and walls and whatnot. And Tommy Brennan, our runner, basically, that was practically his full-time job on set to dress the snow.
The reason I like doing a film like this is it's kind of old-fashioned filmmaking, which I like. And when you're doing something big and you've got a huge budget and you've got all the toys, it's kind of easier because you can just do it. When you're doing something like this, you have to be able to make do with what you've got. And there is a huge satisfaction at the end of the day from A, having shot something decent, and B, having shot it on time.
100, take 1.
When you get to the end of something that has been a fast and intense experience where going into it, you know you probably don't have quite enough time to get everything you need, which is always the case in film production. When you actually pull it off, there's this incredible feeling of accomplishment. And as David Ewan, my producer, always says to me, at the end, when we yell cut on the last shot on the last day, he'll lean in to me and always go, well, looks like we got away with it. And he's right, we got away with it. And it's like, because, you know, we had so much to do and didn't feel that we deserved to achieve what we did. And it's, yeah, It's euphoric.
Here's to you guys for being brilliant, and I owe you an incredible debt of gratitude. Thank you very much.
And money.
Get your invoice and then buy it.
And cut. Camera rolls.
I love a really good romantic comedy or dramedy, and the precious few made in Scotland. I mean, there was one really obscure one a few years ago called Gregory's Girl, I think it was called. But it sort of sank without trace.
I don't think anybody ever saw that.
Anyone that was in that film, there was a kind of the curse of Gregory's Girl when no one went to work again. So it's been long enough now. It's been 40 years. I think it's time to bring the Scottish romantic comedy back and a festive one as well, because who doesn't love Christmas? If you don't love Christmas, you have a swinging brick for a heart, my friend.
Ah, laddie. I've just been speaking with your good lady. Oh, you know what I mean. Anyway, she could do with...
First business, please.
She could do with help. She could do with... A friend. A friend. She's gone for a walk. She says she's gone to make sure the roads are clear.
On her own?
No, because the door just opened and Jesus just come in.
Yes.
Or maybe it was Christ, anyway. Ah, hi, laddie.
Okay, still rolling.
Chris. I'm Clara. No, I'm Jen. Natalie. Sorry.
Kind of interested you. No, sorry.
Over a mother! Jen! Watch the roads!
No acting involved, we're actually terrified.
I don't know that there's an exhaust left on this car.
Yes.
Mother.
Oh. I hope this car's not expensive.
You total grass.
You're kidding me, we just got stopped by the police in a stolen car.
Oh, duck.
Not at the moment.
Oh, what's my line?
Bottoms up. It was me that put in the orange.